Hi, how are you? So in this video, I'm going to take a look at this particular item that I just received in the mail. I bought this online. As you can see, it's a realistic stereo disco mixer. And this was a mixer that I remember seeing around a lot back in the day. I remember kind of back in the 80s and into the 90s, there were a lot of these kicking around. And as I've mentioned before, as a kid, I used to frequently go to my local Radio Shack. And I used to stand looking at their line of mixers. And I have a previous video where I talked about the simplest mixer that they have, the smallest mixer that they used to have. It was basically just a little 4-channel mixer. It was about half the size of this one. And I did a video on that particular mixer, and I encourage you to go have a look at that. But in this video, I'm going to be looking at this particular model, the Realistic Stereo Disco Mixer. And what's really funny about the title, certainly by the time this mixer came out, which I think was sort of like the early 80s, this word disco was really kind of frowned upon. It was very uncool by that point, more so in North America from what I understand. I don't know if it was the same story in Europe, but in North America the word disco by the mid-80s was considered very, very passé and very uncool. So I find it kind of amusing that they would call this the stereo disco mixer, and you can even see it on the mixer itself. It very proudly proclaims stereo disco mixer. So in this video, I'm just going to be taking a detailed look at all the different features of this particular mixer. As I said, I bought this online. I think I paid about $30 for it. And there's quite a few of these. If you go on places like eBay, you'll have no trouble at all finding the Realistic line of mixers. There's many of them on there. I would only say buyer beware. If you're looking for one that you actually want to buy and use, be very careful, because a lot of the stuff that's for sale on places like that, the quality and the condition may not be that great. Even if they claim that the item was tested and that it's working properly, sometimes that's not always true from my experience. So buyer beware. Pay very careful attention to the rating of the seller. How high is their rating? And always be very mindful of that. So again, the mixer came in the original box, which is really cool. The original owner's manual is in there as well. I'll show that to you. And I also want to show you the text on the side of the box. Okay, so here's the side of the box. I'll take the mixer out in a moment and show you, but basically we have the catalog number over here. It's 32-1101A, and it basically says Realistic Stereo Disco Mixer, mixes 4 stereo inputs, twin VU meters, built-in cue/monitor for headphones, magnetic and ceramic phono inputs, and I'll talk more about that later. And it also says tape and line outputs. And it says requires 4 AA batteries not included, or optional AC adapter. And that's the one kind of fault with this mixer, and the seller was very honest about this. The little door that holds the batteries in place was missing. But otherwise, everything is intact and everything should be good to go. So I'll actually show you what the mixer looks like. Okay, so I'll show you, as I mentioned, it came with the original owner's manual, and we can see that here. And again, we have the catalog number 32-1101A. And so it basically goes through and describes all the connections and all the inputs and all the different features of this particular mixer. And here is the mixer itself. Okay, so I'll just go through and describe the various features of this stereo disco mixer. So basically we have our sliders for the microphones. You see it indicates microphone up here, and this says left mono and right. And the faders feel pretty good. They're actually kind of tight. They're not very smooth. I have to really They're not super hard to move, but there's definitely some resistance there. You do have to put a bit of force into moving them. It may just be that this mixer wasn't really used all that much. The previous owner may have had it tucked away in a closet somewhere and didn't really use it that much over the years, and it's still it feels kind of still brand new when I move the faders. So up here we have the out-in switch for each of the microphones. Moving to the right, we have the faders for Phono 1 and Phono 2, and we also have Q switches, so it says Q on this side and in on that side. And from my understanding, the thing about that is that when you had it in Q, for example, say I'm DJing a wedding, and let's say right now I'm playing a record that's running into Phono 2. I can queue up the next record for the next song, and I can basically, while this one is playing, I can listen to the other turntable and just get the next song queued up. And as long as the button is in the queue position, I can hear the music through the headphones, but it doesn't go to the main outputs. So basically the audience is not hearing that next record being queued up, but I can hear it through the headphones as long as this button is in the queue position. And when I'm ready to put it back into the mix, I just switch it back over to in. It's really quite a clever feature of this line of mixers. Not every realistic mixer offered that feature, but this one did, and I always thought that was really, really neat. And finally, we have this fader over here for tape, and it also offers the Q in selection. And that one feels not as hard. That one moves a bit more freely. We have our headphone jack down here on the bottom right. And we have our two VU meters, which I always really loved. I've always been a big fan of that old school VU meter with the moving needle. I really love that, and I'll show those to you in a moment. Right now the unit is turned off. I do have an adapter running in. The adapter jack is up here on the top right. Here's our power button, simply toggles between off and on, and we also have a mode selection, so you can switch from mono to stereo. And my other realistic mixer also offered that. Even the smallest little 4-channel mixer that I've reviewed before, that also had a mode selector switch, so you could toggle between mono and stereo. So I'm going to turn this thing on. Okay, so now we're on, and there's also a battery test button, and watch very carefully. Watch the VU meters and watch what happens when I hit the battery test button. So as you can see, the needles move up, basically indicating that we have power. And of course, because I have the adapter running in, it's going to show that. But basically, again, I hit the battery test button, the needles move up, that shows me I've got proper power. Okay, so now I'll show you the back of this particular mixer, all the inputs and outputs. Okay, so here we have the back panel of the mixer, and I'll start over here on the left and work my way over to the right. So again, here we have the input jack. It's a 9-volt jack for power. We have the main output here, left and right RCA, and we have our two tape. We have the output and the input, of course, both also RCA. Most of the connections are RCA. And very interestingly, we have Phono 2 and Phono 1. Now these aren't in and outs. As I mentioned before, you basically had a choice between ceramic or magnetic, and that was depending on the type of turntable that you were using. And I'll get more into that in a future video. I'll talk about the difference between ceramic and magnetic turntables. So basically you had that option of choosing between ceramic or magnetic for Phono 2 or Phono 1. And that's really, again, it's interesting for such a entry-level mixer to offer that option. Over here you have your inputs for the microphones. You have the right input and the left mono input over here, and you have a little connection for your ground. So yeah, basically that's the back panel. And just very quickly, I'll show you the bottom. And as I said, there's the compartment for the 4 AA batteries. The little door is missing. The seller told me about that. And we have our little label here that you would often see on the realistic products. So that's basically looking at the bottom and the back panel. So that's my little look at the Realistic Stereo Disco mixer. I'm really happy to add this to my collection. Again, I've known about it for years and years. As I mentioned, I saw a lot of these kicking around back in the day. I always thought they were a lot of fun. Again, they're not top of the line, they're not high-end audio equipment. But as I mentioned before, I've always been a big fan of Realistic. I find that, you know, most of the equipment they manufactured was very, very reliable, much more so than most people will want you to think. And a lot of Realistic items that I have that are 30, 40 years old, they still work great. So to be honest, I'm really quite a fan. So again, I'm really happy to add this one to my collection. So my question to you, do you own this mixer? Have you ever owned this mixer? Do you have any mixers that were manufactured by Realistic? What do you think about them? Do you like them? Please feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do. It's always greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.